On today's episode of Star Wars Lore, I'm going to be going through my 6 top super weapons in the Star Wars universe. To make this list, the super weapons have to happen pre the end of the Galactic Civil War, so anything that happened before the death of Emperor Palpatine and Darth Vader. So without any further ado, let's go. So, 6 on the list, we have the Separatist super tank, lesser known as it appears very rarely in the Star Wars universe. It was first introduced in the Clone Wars series, so I'm guessing that a fair few people may not know about it. These tanks were created on Geonosis by the Bactoid Armor Workshop. This is basically a company that creates weapons and tanks and ships for the Separatists, or the Confederacy of Independent Systems, CIS. The tanks were first released during a siege of a Geonosian factory, where Poggle the Lesser released 20 of them. The heavy armour of the tanks simply repelled any fire that the Republic could throw at them, and, well, this was mainly due to the tanks' incredibly thick plating. Although the weapons on these tanks were fairly standard, with twin blasters attached to the front and a barrage of mortar rounds that were easily able to disable the Republic's artillery. Funnily enough, the tanks were only stopped when the bridge that they were travelling across was destroyed, making them fall a tremendous height. Not destroying them, but immobilising them. Again, only 23 of the super tanks were actually known to have been in the war. 20 at the Battle of Geonosis that were immobilised at the bridge, and 1 that destroyed the armour workshop, and at least 3 on the planet Osnek. But I think what the Separatists learnt from this is that just having a big pile of tank going along doesn't make them very useful. 5th on the list, we have the Electro Proton bomb, another favourite from the Clone Wars. I know, it's weird that I watched this many of the episodes. The bomb is essentially a giant EMP, electric magnetic pulse, and it was specifically designed to combat the Separatists' giant droid army on the planet Malastare. The bomb was dropped and completely destroyed the approaching droid army, as well as any Republic machinery, but it left any organics, such as the clone forces, unharmed. Ultimately, it was a very, very effective weapon for destroying the Separatists' purely droid army. The only issue with the bomb is that it had a devastating effect on Malastare's delicate ecosystem, in this case waking a giant ancient Zillo beast that was believed to be extinct. And then it's about 3 episodes of that from there. 4th on the list comes a bit earlier than the Clone Wars, in the Old Republic era. The Sith Empire engineered the Gauntlet, a giant laser cannon that could be fastened to a starship. But what was so unique about this weapon is that the laser could travel at light speed. This meant that ships making a jump to hyperspace could be easily picked off, so there was no escape. Ultimately, this meant that once caught in a battle against the Sith fleet, their enemies had no choice but to fight, or face utter annihilation, as escape was impossible. The reason I like this weapon is because it was quite unique and interesting, because I think hyperspace is kind of used quite a lot in the Star Wars universe to be like, oh, it's okay, we made a jump to hyperspace, they can't follow us. But this really kind of put a stop to all of that. At 3rd, we have the Mass Shadow Generator. Now, this is the big league stuff. It's more planet-destroying rather than ship-destroying. It was used in the Old Republic era. The weapon was designed to take advantage of the Malachor system's unique gravity field. It was first used by Revan with the goal of ending the Mandalorian Wars. He did this by luring the Mandalorians to the planet Malachor 5, where a huge firefight began in orbit between the Republic and the Mandalorians' fleets. During the battle, the weapon was activated, and a large amount of both fleets were dragged into a gravitational vortex, causing them to plummet down to the planet. It also ripped the planet's surface apart, leaving Malachor 5 full of gravitational anomalies and small planetoids covering it. Of course, the only flaw with this weapon is that it was only really made to work in Malachor's system, and therefore not the most practical, but still very devastating. A surprising second is the Death Star, or the DSO-1 or DSO-2, but we're only going to be talking about the Death Star 1 in this case. Constructed by the Empire, but was actually designed by the Separatists, the Death Star was believed to be a superstation, with the capacity to hold around 31 million crew members, soldiers, or anybody else who was essential to the Empire. the Death Star really was a super fortress that any Dark Lord would be more than happy to call home. Equipped with what is simply known as a super laser, which of course had the capability of destroying a planet, as well as being fitted with thousands of smaller defense weapons and the ability to hold entire Imperial fleets for quick defense mechanism and attacking. The purpose of the Death Star was simply to enforce Galactic Empire rule in the galaxy with the threat of planetary destruction, which is quite a big threat. The only issue with the Death Star, of course, was the minor design flaw of having an easy access self-destruct core. And you know what's weird? They didn't really solve that with the Death Star Mark II. Oh well. So, here it is, number 1 on the list. The Sun Crusher. Cool name, right? The Starfighter-sized ship was another weapon developed by the Galactic Empire. Whilst the Death Star could destroy planets, this little monster could annihilate entire systems in one devastating blow. It does this by turning a star into a supernova. Ultimately, this means that anything in the surrounding area will be wiped off the galaxy, as well as this supernovas will either turn into a black hole or a neutron star. That is real physics for you right there. The weird thing is about the Sun Crusher is it survives the process. It doesn't just blow up, because obviously it needs to get to the star. Now, it survives these sort of giant nebular explosions by having quantum crystalline armor. This stuff is almost physics-defying in the way that it can survive incredible forces, meaning the ship is pretty much indestructible. Interestingly enough, the ship was actually made from funds that were diverted by the Death Star's funds, so it really was kind of a secret weapon. The flaw in it obviously being you can't use it without destroying an entire system. As well as that, the materials needed, the quantum crystalline armor, is very expensive. So it really wasn't used that much, but in my opinion, the fact that it can destroy an entire system makes it a bit more powerful than the Death Star. Granted, it's not a super fortress, but it's pretty damn powerful. So, that's my top 6 super weapons in the Star Wars universe. Did you disagree with the list?
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
If so, then please pop it down in the comments below what weapon you think should be on this list. Now, I do hope that you enjoyed this. I thought I'd do something a bit different. Please do, if you did, like, comment and subscribe, because it really shows that you're enjoying the stuff I'm doing. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.